was that quote that's like, a man that works with his mind has to, like then play with his hands. You know what I'm talking about? That quote where it's like, if a man uses his mind for work, then he has to use his off time to work with his hands. I know
I've never heard it, but I 100% agree.
Yeah, because you split your time pretty even. I don't know if you split your time evenly between like using brain power. Obviously, it takes a ton of brain power to just manage everything. But then you find time to like work on projects like this. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. No, I think it's whenever you start getting burnt out on the mental grind, it's nice to be able to pivot and be able to use your hands, I think that's the good thing about working for yourself is like, you know that, you know what I mean? It's not as if, and I try to, for everyone that works with me, be cognizant of that and aware of if they are getting burnt out themselves, from doing one thing over and over. But for me, definitely, like if I'm, opening up a bunch of stores or training someone that I know is constantly using the mental, it's nice to just be able to develop a plan. And normally, I don't have much time to give something. So like I always need to be working with someone else. So it's not as if I get to not use the mind, like on the weekends, if JB will work with me, or if like on Friday, one of our, Hispanic teammates is working with me. Like, I still have to use the mind, I have to be always having projects for them to work on. So as soon as they're coming to me, I know what the next thing is. Yeah. So it's not as if you ever just get a full relief and don't have to do anything mentally. But
yeah. Well, that's the dirty secret with growing is you think there's going to be a point where you grow to a point where you are relieved of most of your duties. And I guess some responsibilities are passed down, but you hit a certain point with a company where it's like, it feels like it keeps coming at you. You know what I mean?
Yeah. The biggest thing is like the problems just get bigger. You know what I mean?
More zeros on the end of
the
them.
Volume of the little problems decreases, but like the significance of the problems, like no matter what, you're always going to be chief problem solver.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like if there are big issues that come up, you'll always have to be capable of solving those, because a lot of the times it's not as if your teammates are unable to solve them. It's just the liability keeps growing and growing. Like the cost of said decision keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And so inevitably the most costly decisions are going to be made at the top. Mm-hmm. So it's not the volume has certainly decreased, but like the importance of the decisions or things that I have to figure out, just keeps getting higher and higher in cost,
Do you feel like you take more brain power to solve those one or two big issues, or is it more brain power to like swat at the little mosquito problems? Also, Mary Catherine, I've got my laptop in there on charge. I've got some questions queued up, like some quotes from SB from way back in the day. I did a little digging for this one, man.
Okay.
Do you mind if you just grab that from me real quick? Thank you. But it should just be on charge in the other room. But yeah, is it more taxing mentally to work on the one or two big problems that are like fundamentally, structured with the company, or is it the little, the 1,000 mosquito problems that come up every day?
Well, I think the difference becomes in your own planning, right? Like the bigger you grow, the more forethought you need to have, right? Like you're constantly trying to be ahead, like one step ahead of what an inevitable problem would be.
Yeah.
And so like the more you start trying to predict, the more time you have to spend strategizing and understanding. And like, that's why now I've become a systems fiend and trying to build KPIs and stuff like that, because trends or, like what's going on in the market or with legislation that may impact aspects of our business, you just have to be very aware and have forethought to understand what this is eventually going to mean. So you're always trying to work a step ahead, which just takes time, to analyze or to predict. So it's like early on, all of the mosquito problems, as you call it, come up from working in the business.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but like the longer you go, the bigger problems that will have impact, if not addressed or if not forecasted properly, come from working on the business.
Mm-hmm.
You know, working on the business takes a lot of time to move to like have a needle moving item, right? So like if you're working in it and you need to go make 10 bags of coffee, you can rip out 10 bags of coffee. It's still a to-do. It's something very important that needs to get done. And that may take you, 3 minutes to do, right? But like to forecast, okay, if we lose our dry goods sales because of tariffs, I mean, that takes a lot longer to do. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
We need to communicate with the team, figure out what branding we need to retain. And then, okay, we know we have to retain this branding no matter what. Well, then you need to shift the supply chain. You need to start reaching out to Korean, whoever. Like you got to reach out to different suppliers to continue the importing game, or just need to import them, just purchase them domestically and wear the cost. Okay, so if you wear the cost, what are you increasing your prices? Because if not, your cost of goods sold is going to change, and business is ran on percent. So it's I mean, I think it takes way more time to work on it and try to forecast than it does knocking out the little, mosquito ones. Therefore, you have to position yourself to where the volume has to be less, because you can't be working on 50 different big items at one time. You have to, because those take time to develop.
Yeah.
So you can only have so many going.
I mean, I can only imagine us back in 2017 or whatever, like what we imagined the problems we would be facing if we had, X successful business.
Right.
How those problems evolve. You're like, man, it must be so nice if you're doing this well to like have those problems. And yes, it is a blessing to be growing, and it is a blessing for things to be changing very rapidly. But what would you have told Shane circa 2017 about like, hey, like you're gonna have to get some thick skin? Is there like anything that you would have told him about like the problems that come up in a business that he was just so naive to?
I think if in 2017, had I looked at, like, had I known, like, okay, where we would be now, I definitely would not have thought that, okay, I'd also be able to, have some weekend time to myself, because like everything that I was doing then, when Z-Beans got busier, Shane had to be busier because I was working in the business all the time. So, I mean, I think it was, I'm very, grateful for where we're at and the ability to have so many talented teammates that are, working on the different items that are necessary to make the business run on a day-to-day basis. So, I mean, I would have just, at that time, as I'm still learning now, I would not have otherwise known how to get us to this point. You know what I mean? Like I would have, if you would have told us how many, hospital opportunities and stores we would have, wholesale customers, I wouldn't understand like how in the world would I be doing that, because everything looked like I was doing it. I was roasting coffee in a popcorn popper. It takes an hour to do 13 ounces. Like it's hard to forecast the scale, but just the constant acquisition of knowledge, constantly being open, and, trying to be the best leader you can be as far as bringing on new teammates, and being willing to, prioritize their continued growth and try to give them the tools to be able to do so. But like, I definitely would not have understood how to get us to this point.
It'd been like dropping you on a different planet.
Yeah, right. I didn't have the skill set then. I think that's the best way to put it. I definitely did not have the skill set then, because the only reason I have the skill set now is because of all the experience that I've gained in those, 7 years, 6 years, 8 years, however long it's been.
Yeah.
And accumulating that knowledge. You know what I mean? So like,
yeah.
It's impossible to do it without it, because there's nothing that you can learn in school. Like reflecting now, like where I'm at, school was more helpful than it was then, because then, meaning 2017, was just me working in the business. I had to figure out, what is coffee? Like, literally starting, coming from a family that never drank a sip. And, I'd never seen Pops or Mom drink a sip growing up. We didn't have a Keurig machine. We had nothing, not even Mr. Coffee. So like, starting from there. But now, like what you learn with economics and marketing, from a macro scale and a micro scale, it's now more applicable. You know what I mean? Because it's now as if I would have taken a job in data analytics.
Yeah.
Right. So like school teaches you how to be good at data analytics. Well, I didn't need data analytics 7 years ago. I needed to know. I just needed time to roast the dang coffee.
Yeah.
The data analytics mean nothing to me.
Yep.
So it's school definitely is more helpful now because I'm in a position that I otherwise probably would have just graduated and taken at another job.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
the biggest change that I've noticed is obviously the people. Like you build a very big culture around that. What was I know Carter was kind of like the first one after you, and then Ben, like that kind of central crew. Where did you start to hire that wasn't a barista where you felt like you were really stretching, where you're like, okay, like I've really got to like, I don't want to do it. Like obviously payroll is like a huge expense.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, we definitely have to have baristas. We did, people in the shops, and we've got like the core people. It's like, where was like the first spend on team? Because now we've got, I don't even know how many people, a lot. It's
me either. No, I remember thinking like, when do you know is the right time to bring on someone to help? I remember thinking that, like, and the different things that I've read, from the mentors that like I've been able to talk to that had grown their own successful businesses. I think the biggest understanding is like anytime you start trying to hire teammates, it's like it is a leap of faith. Like it may appear as if like, wow, I don't have the revenue coming in. But the important thing is to understand is when you are able to hire that first teammate that now fills bags, you're now able to fill your time with something else. Mm-hmm. And so like that was the whole reason why I knew my senior year I needed to add a marketing degree to where I could understand just simple consumer behavior and how to sell product. Mm-hmm. It wasn't so much marketing as it was just direct sales. Like I needed to be able to take the time that I otherwise was filling bags, go sell product. So now that person that I'm paying to fill bags, has a 20-hour-a-week job, 30-hour-a-week job, 40-hour-a-week job. And that's just, how I built it. And then through that, I mean, it gives you a better understanding of like, okay, what are the numbers? You just keep learning, what the percents need to be. Where does my cost of labor need to be? But there is no way to sugarcoat it. It's a leap of faith, trusting that, hey, I can go and sell enough product to pay this person.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think for all young entrepreneurs, and thankfully I was, blessed in a situation where like I could have, I could sacrifice myself. So like if I was taking money out of the business and I knew I wanted to bring someone on, I could just pay myself less, and I mean, I would say that realization of, you better have the money in the bank to be able to pay your teammates occurred from really early, and thankfully it certainly helps and is incredibly important that the first leap of faith that you take is very calculated and you trust that, okay, this is going to be profitable, because if the first leap of faith that I took with opening, the retail store at Mercer Village struggled right out of the gate, it'd been very hard.
Yeah.
It'd been very, very difficult. So I think there is something to be said about allowing your growth to be methodical early on with the understanding that I everything's a risk, but like it has to be a very calculated risk to take that first step. Mm-hmm. I don't want to say you can't miss because there's plenty that have been able to bounce back and there's plenty of misses along the way that we have had. But like that first one,
that's like a make or break point.
It needs to be successful, and the good thing is like when I first started selling retail wise, I was selling in a local market that was right by what is now Mercer Village. And so I felt very confident that like, hey, we'd have students, that be willing to come into the store, but like through the relationship that I was able to build at the Mulberry Market on Wednesday afternoons, like other people would be coming in too to support, because they appreciated what Z-Beans is. But the last thing I'll say as far as understanding like where that first calculated risk could be is trying to understand where your leverage point is. And so like for myself, I remember talking to the head of the Mercer on Mission group, 7-8 years ago. And I was telling him, obviously about the idea and what I wanted to continue to do. And he was one of the first ones that taught me this idea of trying to understand where your leverage is, because where you have leverage is where you have other people that are working for you that you're not paying because mm-hmm. it may make them look good. So for instance, for ourselves is the intersection of Mercer on Mission and the Mercer Innovation Center. Mercer had just launched this innovation center concept, right, where they would bring in young entrepreneurs that were trying to start businesses, and they wanted them to be successful out of that innovation center, right? Like they wanted a success story. They wanted the innovation center to be utilized, you know? Well, if you look at the Mercer on Mission side, as Mercer on Mission, that was one of the first business-based trips that they had. It was the first trip in which we said, hey, can coffee be a realistic economic alternative to gold mining? You know, so the intersection for myself in there was, okay, how can I leverage what Mercer needs with the Innovation Center to be successful and what Mercer wants as far as Mercer on Mission to be successful, and then the Ecuadorian local government that wants Mercer to continue to come to Zaruma.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's the intersection. So like, how do you try to leverage that so that your first calculated jump is more probable to be successful, you know? And there's no guarantee, but like it's understanding that intersection. And I think, you know, everyone is different. I mean, and great examples are like, country singers. It kind of comes top of mind. Like if you can't dominate your local bars or your local clubs or like just your local open mic nights, how are you going to dominate nationally?
Yeah,
you can't.
You got to really take over locally.
Yeah, you got to make your name locally and then start trying to slowly, you know, grow it out. You know, like we had the opportunity to open the first hospital at what was HCA Coliseum, now Piedmont. And I mean, that was our learning ground, proving ground as to like, okay, how do we make this hospital model work? You know, that's what taught us we needed the production house, you know, where we needed to make our food off site and distribute it. So like, but like that was right down the street. So when we failed from a delivery standpoint, meaning we didn't get them the products they needed, it was right down the street. It was easy to just run product over there because we messed up.
Literally run.
Right. Yeah. So it's
crates eggs on each side.
Yeah.
Even it out.
So I think that's that's important, very important for the startup.
Mercer Innovation Center, I mean, that was like our old stomping ground. So for context, I met you through the Innovation Center, but I didn't have a business. I did my own media stuff.
That's right.
But I was just employed there as, you know, it's like a college, you know, $10 an hour kind of job.
Right.
It seems like Mercer's Innovation Center was like your first form of marketing for Z-Beans. Is that like fair to say? Like, were you doing anything outside of like the markets and the Innovation Center where you're like, all right, I really got to market Z-Beans. I really got to push Z-Beans. Or were you just like kind of riding that?
Well, to me, I've always been much more of a direct sales guy. So like the first model that I wanted to establish that felt recurring outside of, you know, a coffee shop was trying to sell coffee to offices. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so the startup, you know, the bootstrapping story that was Z-Beans at that time was certainly the story that I leveraged to go out and sell, you know, because I needed to have someone that was, at first it was me making the bags, but then I needed to pay someone to make the bags. Therefore I needed to find what was the quickest way I could enter the market and start stacking revenue that I knew was going to be recurring. Yeah. You know,
were you doing like social media posts and everything back then, or did you get that out of your hands early? I can't see you just like snapping on the gram, posting pictures.
I mean, I don't even have Instagram. I've never had a personal Instagram.
Yeah. Yeah.
I did because it was kind of a necessary evil, you know, and then once I mean, as soon as I had Mercer Village, I knew it became marketing at that standpoint, right? Like sure, you could go out and give cards and say, go to my coffee shop, you know, here's 20% off. And I guess that's semi-direct sales, but like from a marketing of just trying to build a brand that people resonate with. Therefore, when, you know, they constantly see your brand. So when they're passing through Mercer Village, they want to stop at your store. Like that's more marketing, not necessarily my, you know, forte or background, because it's much more strategic and requires time, like time I did not have, you know, at that time I do not have now, which is, you know, why we have a team that does marketing. Yeah. You know, so, but no, I would make those posts, as, you know, our marketing team probably knows now, yourself, Mary Catherine, looking back on those posts. I mean, it was whatever the iPhone
It's
could
necessary.
produce.
That's the thing. It's at the time you felt like that was like exactly what you needed. You know what I mean? Or otherwise you wouldn't, especially your personality, you wouldn't have posted something that you weren't like, okay, this is like professional enough. It gets the point home. This is like driving what I need.
Right.
Like, you're not one to just do the creative kind of stuff.
Right. That's
like,
right.
Okay, because I know you did the blog. Did you ever like play around with vlogging or anything like that?
I think we did. Like early on, I had something I would set up and like show myself roasting, but like I would just leverage that for direct sales because I realized that the story was what was selling, and not just like the international of what we were trying to do for the Ecuadorian farmers. Because at that time, I wouldn't say it was necessarily moving the needle to be able to buy 4,000 pounds of coffee from a couple of different farmers, but like seeing someone that's roasting in a chicken rotisserie roaster, that's one of the vlogs, so to speak. I'm explaining this. Like you respect the hustle, and like that is marketable. That's, stories that you can tell. So like when people see it, they're like, that's really cool. It's innovative.
Yeah.
It's bootstrapped growth and people relate to that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
I've joked with Mary Catherine about, and I might have even talked to you about it, is like when we started the Behind the Brand vlog series that we do, it's like, man, how cool would that have been to have like one of those episodes 7 years ago?
I know.
It's like one of those things you wish you could kind of rewind time and start it just a little bit sooner. Because we started Behind the Brand, I think, the week after we got Biggs. So like it's crazy. None of those walls were in. Like, the first pallet of coffee was on the floor right out there.
Yeah.
It's like, man, if you could just rewind it just a few more years, how crazy it would have been to have like a week to week progression of how the company's going. Because it's very, especially in the past year that we've done this, there's been a lot of growth and a lot of opportunities that have come out of that.
100%. Yeah.
Is there any episode, if you could go back in time, is there any episode you would have loved to have seen from you?
I would say
like a week that sticks out where you're like, man, we're moving the needle here.
So I had 1 week, I was still in the Innovation Center and still using, I think at that time it was still the it was the popcorn popper because I had it out on the little patio, the back patio.
Yep.
And I had a market that was it was like an open air, like much larger market that I was trying to tackle on a Saturday. And, I only produced 1 bag of coffee like every hour. So I needed to keep that thing spinning. And there's a stage at the Innovation Center, like where we do the pitches and stuff.
Yep.
And it was a Friday night, and I just decided, you know what? I'm going to just sleep in 50-minute intervals on the stage. So like I was sleeping in this side room that had some couches in it. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Where the tables are on the left-hand side.
Yeah.
But it got locked. And it, and I don't know what possessed me to do it. Like, I had my blanket, my pillow, and I just would set it up, and then I'd have my phone timer, my alarm, and it would, go off every 50 minutes. I go out there, swap it, go right, lay right back down because I was exhausted. And then very next, so I get all the coffee roasted, I get it bagged up, and then the next day, I have the market.
That's one of those nights that you'll remember for the rest of your life. But boy, you'll feel like that night went on forever.
Yeah, it was, but that would have been a cool one to see. A lot of those memories of trying to just get it off the ground and going, would have been cool to have it. And I think I always enjoyed writing. I was very fortunate through high school. I had some really great English teachers, and I really enjoyed writing. And I think that was kind of the outlet that doing the blogs at that time would give me. It was kind of a way to just almost document like where Zeebings was, and a way to do something different. Kind of going back to what we were talking at the very beginning, where like being able to work with your hands is nice. At that time, being able to work with my mind was nice because everything was being done with my hands.
Yeah.
So it kind of gave me that outlet that otherwise like vlogging would do. And vlogging since 8 years ago, it was relatively popular, but like now it's incredibly popular, so maybe if I could turn back the hands of time, I would do more vlogging because it'd be cool to have seen that stuff. But
if if you're filming yourself, it tends to, I'm not talking about you, I'm just talking about general. If you film yourself, it tends to be much more awkward than somebody doing it for you. Like I know when we went to Ecuador, it was very easy for me to get all the footage that we needed for the journey. But I couldn't imagine being in Ecuador and then I've got to, do all that stuff and then I've got to film at the exact same time. It wouldn't have worked otherwise to put together something like that.
100%. No, you lose the
moment.
The moment. 100%. That's like you lose the just natural sense of what the moment really is. Because you have to legitimately stop and think like, wait, hold on, let's try to recreate that. And it's, it's never the same. It's just the authenticity, I guess is the word I was looking for. Mm-hmm. So it's very authentic when you can have someone else that's with you and helping you document it. But I mean, those memories are, you got to file them back in the bank. And I'm sure, so many founders of companies, think about that. If they could go back and be like, man, it'd been nice to have had that on video, or even had, I mean, from my standpoint, I don't even have pictures. Yeah. We have very few pictures because I was just in the grind. I'm not wired to think, oh, let me film this. I wonder how many photos over the years I just deleted because I needed space on my phone because I couldn't pay the $4.99 for extra storage.
I know what you mean.
So
I think the last podcast you on was Talking Macon, and that was right before the journey came out because you guys talked briefly about it. Do you remember any parts that stuck out in the journey, the short film that we worked on?
Definitely Pops. That's one that always sit with me. That's probably.
I'll preface it. Mary Catherine cried like a baby.
Did she?
Yeah. When we were working on the drafts, because the way that we built the video was we got all the interviews first, and so we had kind of the storyline of everything, and then we stacked footage on top of it wherever it made sense, and then. Your dad was more last minute, so we had the full episode. I think it was close to 25 minutes for the whole thing lined up. And then there came to be some point where we're like, we've got to talk to your dad. Like a couple clips popped up in B-roll or something like that. It's like, we have got to talk to Mr. Ted. And that was like a month before the project came out. We had been spending a year building out the interview, and then something possessed us last minute. Is that kind of how you recall it, Mary Catherine?
Yeah, it was like we needed something to tie everything together.
Yeah, and we were just like, Mr. Ted has got to fit in this. Because
I needed somebody else who knew the whole story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's right.
Especially in the details.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so the part about your dad, that stuck out?
Yeah, definitely. Now, I would say that's probably up there with one of the greatest moments that I've had with Z-Beans is when, Pops had sent me a text and said, son, do you have a space for me? I said, do you have a spot for me? He said, son, do you have a spot for me? And so immediately I called him. Of course, Dad. Like, when can you start? Mm-hmm. And he says, well, I can start this day, but 2 rules. 1, I no longer want to manage people. 2, you cannot give me a computer. Because he knows, we're young, we're techie.
Yep.
And so I dealt with it for, 3 or 4 months, and then eventually I walk over to him with an iPad, and I said to him, Pops, you said you didn't want a computer. What do you think about an iPad? Stares at me for a second.
Play the system,
but
boy.
I tell you what, to this day, though, I bet you right now he's walking around with that iPad, because it's helpful. It's easy. Yeah. But no, definitely that was one of the cooler, moments. I remember that clip kind of gives me chills still thinking about it, where I'd found that news station, like where, it talked about, it was in the trailer, where it talked about WMAZ or what?
Yeah, opening the shops.
Yeah, had come and spoke to us, and he got old BW that is now CFO, and he's talking about be bigger than Starbucks. Mm-hmm. Just it was fun. I mean, it was to this day. I mean, I enjoy doing Z-Beans because it's it's fun and it's something that there's something new every day. But at that time, it was no different. We were just trying to find our way. So, but there's been so many teammates that have stayed, with me to this day. But there's also many talented people that we were working with early on that simply couldn't pay, and so you just wish them the very best, and they have to go their separate ways because rightfully they're they're talented and deserve to make more money or what have you.
Yeah.
You know? So it certainly has been a journey. That's for sure. But it was great.
There's an appropriate name for it.
It was.
The journey's never going to stop.
No.
Speaking of journeys, let's take a journey down memory lane. Why don't we?
All right. Let's hear it.
So I don't have, I probably should have gone through. These are all from blogs.
Okay. Yeah.
So
Yeah, I'm excited about it. Let's hear it.
Yeah. So I don't have any of them time stamped as in like the date that you wrote them. They're just really interesting quotes and points. However, I did timestamp one, and you'll understand why.
Okay.
September 30th, 2018. The C market for coffee just fell below $1, meaning businesses are purchasing coffee for less than $1 per pound. Economists have found that, relatively speaking, farmers need $1.25 per pound to, quote unquote, break even. So, what are they doing now if they can't? They're finding new forms of employment. Coffee is all they have ever known. How has the coffee market changed?
Oh, my goodness.
From that number right there. And if you can explain the C market just a little bit too to get people. So, literally, not C-S-E-A, the C, like
like C as in coffee. Yeah, so the C market is the commodity market. Just like oil, price of oil can drop or go up based on different factors. The C market is no different. As of this recording, what C markets, I haven't checked today, but I'm sure it's north of 365, 370, something like that, a pound. And so it's the factors that are driving it up. You have climate change that's occurring along the coffee belt. So Tropic of Capricorn, Tropic of Cancer runs to the middle of the world. In the middle of that is the equator, Ecuador, in Spanish. And right down the middle of it, is where coffee can be grown. And so when climate changes, so like I know, for example, this year, the big thing was Brazil's production's way down. Brazil's production has always gone in cycles, but like this was supposed to be a year in which there was going to be plenty of production. And supposedly, according to Brazil, that's not going to be the case. So those factors have certainly changed. But I think for Ecuador, the biggest thing that allows them to be not protected against climate change, but like their ecosystems are a lot different. So like farmers that we're working with, they have very small farms, relatively speaking, right? So we'll have tons of shade, meaning, there's other crops that are grown at the farm. And so this diversity really helps those, issues that come up from time to time. Because in mass producing countries, Brazil, Colombia, you may not have shade. You could just have nothing but rows and rows of coffee plants.
Yeah.
And if they don't get the exact amount of water that they need, because irrigation systems are really rare, they are incredibly costly. Think of trying to irrigate 1,000 acres or hectareas, as they would call them, acres of land.
It's got to be crazy.
The irrigation is, you're just relying on the good Lord to give you the rain that you need.
Yeah.
So Ecuador is, like, I've talked to all the farmers as soon as those things started happening. Like, hey, how's production this year? What are you forecasting? And everything was flowering at the right time. None of them have said to me, Shane, we're in a tough spot, which we've always paid about $1 to $1.20 more than the C market has stated at that time. In writing that, it was a lot more, $2.50 more a pound, but we've always paid more than C market. So what I'm excited about for the Ecuadorian farmer, because the whole point of Z-Beans is to, build sustainable solutions for the hardworking farmers of Ecuador, is now that they have been able to sustainably sell to us, meaning I've never once asked them to strip orange trees that take up quite a large area in which you can't grow coffee, within a certain diameter of an orange tree, because an orange tree sucks up so many nutrients that inevitably you can't have coffee plants near them, right? Or they'll wilt, they won't get the production they need because the orange tree's sucking it all up.
Yeah.
So we've been able to, grow it sustainably. Like we've purchased what they produce, have never once asked to strip pick. They've only picked ripe cherries. We've never asked to cut down trees. So therefore now, ideally, their market is even larger, because if someone comes into Ecuador saying, hey, we'll pay you C market price, though they're a dollarized country, which the dollar is a very strong currency for a raw material, trading nation, $3.50 a pound. Well, if you've not had any, your quantity supplied has not changed. Z-Bean's been paying you roughly $2.80 a pound, $2.75 a pound, and someone's coming to you saying $3.50 and you haven't had supply changes, you're in a great spot. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, we've helped sustainable solutions come along, because if Brazil, which is just to the east across the Amazon, is having production issues, well, it only makes sense for South American buyers to start thinking, hey, maybe there's some places in Ecuador that are producing coffee. Yeah. So it's like the commitment to buying Ecuador and never saying, to a farmer that, hey, you can only sell product to us. I mean, it's been a big point, and it's been a friction point as we've continued to do this, because farmers find other buyers, be it in Europe, Italy, wherever, that Japan. I mean, there's tons of them that come in and buy the coffees from them. And as the C market grows, they're not having supply problems. Wonderful. They're in an excellent spot. As far as I'm concerned, we've really helped them do it the right way to where now they can take advantage of this C market. So I mean, I've thought a lot about it. Obviously looking at where the C market is now, and we have to be focused on sustainability ourselves domestically, because man, I'd love to help every farmer in the world, but if we're not running a sustainable business domestically, we don't get to help anyone.
Yep.
So building it the right way, doing right by them. If they come to me and say, Shane, I have a buyer in Europe that's willing to do $3.75 a pound, I may know that, hey, we simply can't do it in the Southeast United States. I can't buy $3.75 green, landed, it's $4.25. It sets us up in a very difficult spot to do what we need to do.
Yep.
That's okay. We've done right by them. Like that was the whole mission of Z-Beans in the first place. Milton Rivadeneira getting big buyers out of that we're working in southern Colombia that are now trickling down into northern Ecuador. That's great. That's us accomplishing our mission without even having to buy the coffee. Yeah. And I think that's an important thing for socially minded, social entrepreneurship based businesses, is like, it's build it the right way to where you make it to where it's okay. You build a system in which it's done the right way by them, even if you're not the one running the system. Mm-hmm. And that's what we've done. If C market's $3.50 and every single one of them come to me and say, Shane, I have buyers willing to pay $3.75. If I can't do it, it's okay. Yeah. We can do it somewhere else.
Does the C market change does it fluctuate pretty heavily, or is it, going up in 10-cent increments? Is it kind of indicative on like big events happening in the coffee world, or?
Yeah. So it's subject to big money. It's subject to, let's say a hedge fund comes in, right? If coffee's at $2.50 a pound and a big buyer has yet to renew their contracts, and if a normal contract is for the big dogs are 18 months to 24 months out, right? Like smaller businesses, we're buying 6 months to 12 months out. If those big dogs are 18 to 24 months and you see that they have not renewed for whatever reason, mm-hmm. Well, sure, it's subject to hedge funds coming in and saying, hey, we're going to, put us down for 1 million pounds. And, they then have leverage to resell that million, because hedge funds may not be in the business of roasting coffee.
Yeah, probably not.
No. So it's subject to market factors, just like oil is, just like commodity-based fruits and stuff like that. I mean, it's.
Yeah, but you won't see outside of big events happening, you won't see dollar fluctuations every year or something like that.
Well, you normally don't. But 52 weeks ago, it was south of $2 a pound.
Really?
Oh yeah.
So it spiked up pretty heavy.
It was, and there was a lot of factors that all occurred at once. The biggest concern was, the climate change and what it was doing to South American production. If governments start, let's say, if they start taking over coffee supply, in Africa, frequently there's government instability that will make it difficult to get coffees out, mm-hmm. right? So if the entire coffee market is a supply and demand graph, and now it's very difficult to get coffee out of a country, I mean, you shift the entire supply curve. That's not quantity supply decreasing, which is along the, axis. It's an entire curve shifting. So therefore, at all quantities, prices are higher, and now you keep stacking those. Government's making it tough. climate change is happening. Hedge funds come in and are able to buy because a big dog doesn't re-up. Like you keep stacking those, that's the $1.50 increase that we see.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's as a smaller company, you just stay true to who you are. It's you can only do what you can do.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And then it mellows out over a certain period of time, coming back down, and just kind of ride the waves of it.
That's right. And I mean, the inflation on the dollar makes it very difficult too, because like the C market, as we see it, is in terms of the dollar. So if the value of the dollar is decreasing, well, it's taking more dollars to purchase that same coffee, right? So that's another shift. And the shifts just keep stacking. But just as they stack to go up, they can stack to go down.
Mm-hmm.
Coffee all of a sudden becomes easier. Brazil announces, "Hey, we've had a great crop. We've climate was great. Climate was fine. Weather was good, and production is where it's supposed to be."
Yep.
Those can change for sure.
Business is booming.
Yeah.
I want to see if you remember this quote that you did. I pulled this quote. I don't have the context leading up to or after this quote. I think you ended a blog with this quote. It's a good one. You're a quote man.
I'm a quote man.
I am. Do you have any quotes that you're hot on right now? Or do you like to keep the same ones?
I'll come across some new ones from time to time. I know growing up, Pops and I would always, like Dad he had a little stack of like sticky notes, and he would always write down a quote, and then we'd be sitting down after I got home from practice or something and watching a ball game, and he'd hit me with the quote, and we'd think about it, talk about it,
Mm-hmm.
But I also had some teachers, like in high school, that we would be able to take quotes and write kind of like just open-ended, what are your thoughts on this? And I really enjoyed those exercises a lot.
Yeah.
But I like quotes because it's few words that get a point across.
Yep.
I know the one that I sent in our group chat last week, Mary Catherine remembers. It was about...
Do you remember without him saying it?
It was an Honest Abe Lincoln quote.
I love it.
It was, if you give me 8 hours to chop down a tree, I'll spend 6 sharpening the axe.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's a good way to look at it.
Yeah.
Can't swing an axe or you can't swing a dull axe on a tree.
No.
You'll sit there too long. See if you remember this. I'm a poem man.
Okay.
I'm a poem man. There's a poem that I was never good in school, but for some reason this one poem stuck with me. It's The Road Ahead or The Road Behind by Joseph Moyarty. He was an umpire in MLB. And it for some reason it was like one of those quotes or one of those poems that like I heard it twice and then I remembered it for the rest of my life.
Mm-hmm.
So I encourage anybody listening or viewing to go read The Road Ahead or The Road Behind. It's a poem about fate. The best way to find out if you can trust somebody is to trust them. Ernest Hemingway. That's from you. Does that ring any bells?
Yeah, so I read Shoe Dog. One of the admins at Buerster, Miss Penny Elkins, she gave me the Shoe Dog book. And it's about Phil Knight, the founder of Nike, and his story, and so much of his book is him talking about the importance of just trusting people, and it really rang a bell. It really like hit home with me because what we were trying to do in Ecuador, there's a reason that no one else is doing it. It wasn't at that time, it wasn't pretty, still to this day, I would say it requires a good amount of trust. But it's the idea that you want to build your business to where you can trust that others are going to do right by you, even if you don't necessarily have the controls in place, But to me, it's always been easy for me to do because like growing up, my pops would always, and my mother, I always felt like they had just a high level of trust in me, But it's almost like like they would trust me so much that I knew it. I knew that they would know that I would make the right decision in that moment. So therefore, you don't you don't forsake them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's how I've tried to build a business. You know, I mean, still this day, like we have drivers, you know, that'll carry the company credit card around that, you know, use it to, that we tell them, hey, you know, each time you're out for a delivery, you can spend up to $20 on lunch. You know, that it was something we enacted to try to keep our drivers with us, because the backbone of distribution is delivery.
Yep.
And you need those with it. I mean, it's just a small token of appreciation when they're out. Hey, we understand that you're not necessarily carrying your sandwich with you because you don't want to get hot in the car. But that's you know, one of many examples that, like, you know, you have to trust people, and there's no way to continue to grow a business and continue to add teammates if you're constantly looking over their shoulder.
Yeah.
Because that's the one thing that leads me to entrepreneurship is like no one's looking over my shoulder.
Yeah.
You know, the teammates that we have now are trusting that I'm going to make the right decision on behalf of 90, you know, teammates or whatever the number is that we have. So that way everyone can receive their paycheck.
Yeah.
You know, or that way everyone can continue to have a job in which they feel as if they can make more money in the future. You know, so it's a trust that everyone has to have in each other, and like that's business. I mean, you can only have so many contracts.
Yeah.
You know, but trust is the ultimate contract.
I'll play devil's advocate for you for a second. This is your baby. You know pretty much the inner workings about how there are obviously exceptions to the rule, but you know a little bit about everything, or a lot about a few things with the company. I would imagine it's very easy, especially instead of hiring, for you to resort to just, let me handle this, let me control this, let me get it going. How has trust evolved for you? Because I'd imagine you've come a long way since starting the company about trusting other teammates to do certain things. Is it easier for you to hire people to do certain things, or do you need to like be really hands-on with it to start? How has that evolved?
Well, okay, so we just had our quarterly meeting for Q1 of 2025, and one of the things that I learned in that meeting, and I'll never forget it. This is really good, but it's a graph, and on the y-axis is urgency, on the x-axis is importance, right? So this is looking at decision making, and in the realm in which I had asked, it had to do with like working on versus working in the business. Like as you continue to grow, how to know what to do and what to delegate, what to schedule, or what to simply not do, right? But I'm answering this in terms of the trust model as well, right? Like urgency and importance when you're first growing, when you're first starting, every dollar is highly important, and a dollar spent is urgent, right? Like there is no like margin for error in there. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
But like as you continue to grow, you want to give teammates more leeway. And with leeway early on, it was real easy for, you know, me to feel as if like, hey, when I'm spending $1, if this is a mistake, oh well, it's my mistake. You know what I mean? Like I know that I have this gray area. It's in my head. I know that if this doesn't quite work out, that's all right. If I open this store and it doesn't work out, it was worth the flyer. We have the cash. You know what I mean? Like, sure, I want it to work, but like you need to be able to. I needed to be able to spend that money and lose to learn. Hey, we can't go in this direction. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, every teammate deserves that too. You know, every teammate deserves the ability to spend a certain amount of money, make a mistake, or just make a decision and it simply be wrong. And we may talk about it, understand what we would do differently the next time. But like that evolves for sure. The ability to allow others to make larger and larger and larger mistakes. Hiring a teammate that just simply doesn't work out, that's not a good cultural fit. That there's only one way to learn that.
Yeah.
And that's to do it. I could give you all the advice in the world, but like at the end of the day, I can't be the one that's hiring every single person. We need other people who are willing to hire them, learn that, hey, this may not have been the right person, right fit for the team, and that's okay. Let's talk about it. Let's do it. But like early on, you can't miss.
You can't.
You can't miss. And so where urgency and importance intersects for wherever your business is at, like that's when you realize, okay, it's something that I should do, or I can continue to delegate.
I wonder if you're going to have an answer for this, and if you don't, that's fine. What was the biggest miss that you had in your mind early on that you're like, we're done? Like, there's no coming back from this, that you somehow found a way to get through? Did you have like a certain miss where you're like, we just blew it right there, boys?
So when I would go to early on, when I would go to Ecuador, I hated the amount of money that we were having to spend on taxis. Because you don't think about it here in the States. You have a vehicle. Since I was 16, I've been able to drive, which is a product of, being very fortunate with the parents that I had that, Pops worked with me at a very young age at driving. So at 16, I got a car. I can do whatever I want. You have all the freedom in the world.
Yep.
Well, when we would go to Ecuador, I always had to pay for these taxis. Taxi. I'm like, sure, the taxis to like otherwise here in the States would be $45. They're $7, but still, it's like when you don't have $7 to spend, again, the intersection of urgency and importance, you're like, hey, I want to find a new solution. So, talking with Arturo, he supposedly has a friend that has vehicles that we can rent.
I love it. Arturo had a friend for something.
Rent this truck, and I'm doing the math like, oh my God, we can do these farmer visits for $35 a day plus gas instead of $120. This is a no-brainer.
Oh, yeah.
Ecuador's petroleum producing nation, so gas, not diesel, but, diesel is very, very cheap. Yeah. Unleaded is actually higher than here in the States. So like if we had a diesel vehicle,
it's like $1.20 a gallon or something like that.
Yeah, nothing. So we decided to rent this vehicle, and long story short, blew up the.
Is it battery?
Get the bottle out of the.
Oh, my bad. Sorry, she's a perfectionist.
That's right.
I like it.
Long story short, blew up the engine in the truck.
You driving or?
I was driving.
Oh, what did you feel?
I was with CV.
Going down that mountain.
I was with CV. It was early in the morning. It was just me and him coming back to Zaruma.
From a farmer meeting?
From in Piñas.
Okay.
We had stayed there overnight. We had worked at the processing facility late. Driving back next morning, Arturo wasn't even up yet. And I look at CV and I'm like, I have no power, dude. I have no power. Like I was pressing the gas all the way down. I'm going nowhere. So we come to a rolling stop. As soon as we stop, all this smoke. And so, not knowing what was going on, I flip the hood up and I tell CV, like, we run behind this house, grab these buckets, fill it up with water, and start dumping it on the motor. And I'm just worried that the whole vehicle's about to catch on fire, just spitting out black smoke. Not white smoke, as if we just ruined the radiator.
Yeah.
And
black smoke.
No, and there's this group of guys that are driving by that like see us, and they're like, "No ponga el agua, no ponga el agua." Like, don't put the water. Like, don't put water on it. Don't put water on it. I didn't think anything of it. We just start dumping buckets of water, ruin the block in the motor, bust the block, and stuff spills out all over the place. It's done. Like, the whole thing's done. And so we tell Arturo, and long story short, they didn't have oil in the motor when we rented the vehicle from this person. Well, it wasn't official like Hertz rental car.
Yeah, that's not Enterprise.
Not Enterprise.
That's a friend of Arturo's.
And so we take the vehicle back, and he's like, "You got to pay me for the vehicle." Dude, I didn't have a pot to.
Was he hot?
Pissing.
Was he hot? Like,
he was pissed.
He was pissed off.
But it was, and Arturo, like, in that moment, if he'd have looked at me and been like, "You have to pay,"
you would have.
I would have had no choice. Yeah. We wouldn't have been able to buy a single pound of coffee. We'd have been SOL. And instead, Arturo looks at the guy and just starts just going at him, telling him it's his fault. He gave us a faulty vehicle. And it got really, really hot. Like, I literally thought Arturo and this guy were about to fight, like fist fight, dude. Like, they were just going at it. And Arturo, looks at me, and he's like, "Come on," bang, bang, bang. And so he just starts taking off running to Gerardo's truck. And so we get to the truck, we jump in, and Gerardo takes off. And so I'm shaking, dude, like, oh my God.
Is Carter still with you at that point?
Oh yeah, so he's in the truck. He's like, hell just happened. And so Arturo wouldn't let us leave the house for the remainder of the trip. Gerardo takes us to the airport. We fly out, week later. But Arturo had our back, dude. But I was definitely shaking, like, oh boy, this isn't going to be good.
Yeah.
But it could have went a very different way.
Yeah. You just had to revise your your plans for the trip a little bit.
Yeah. So I still think about it to this day. Like when we go up that hill leading up to Zaruma, you make the left on that big intersection where like there should be a stoplight, but they're non-existent in Ecuador.
Yep.
And so everyone's just going a million miles a minute, flying everywhere. So like the buses are coming down the hill, and like you just make this big left swooping turn, and that's you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Trying to get up to the city center.
Bro, the one day I did not take Dramamine on that trip, I lost my stomach. I was very good about Dramamine, except for the one day I needed it. He had Arturo had panko queso.
Yeah,
Is
you're a better man than I am. Because I've learned to not touch that cheese. But yeah,
dude, what's up with their cheese? Their cheese is violently different.
I don't get it, man. Like it sucks. Like it is so bad. Like I can't stomach it. Like the milk. I mean, I would love to know how they are able to get milk shelf stable, because it just doesn't seem like that should be possible.
Dude, and you drink stuff that's not shelf stable from just right from the cow if you need to.
Right.
Like you got a tough stomach.
But man, it's brutal. Like I can even smell the cheese, man. And like I'm a huge cheese guy.
Bro, that was the squeakiest cheese I've ever put in my mouth.
Boy, that gives me the creeps just thinking about it, man. I don't know what it is, but I'll tip my cap. That's one of those things that I can't touch with a 10-foot pole, man.
Yeah. Mary Catherine, did you ever have that cheese?
Yeah, the first day when he wasn't there, and I mean I can't speak Spanish. It was just me and Max and.
Did you get
Doc
sick?
And Arturo. No, I didn't get sick. But Arturo just kept feeding me stuff, man, and he wouldn't take no for an answer, and I didn't know how to tell him anything else.
That's
You
what he
have like
does.
an iron stomach.
Jeez.
If that didn't affect you.
That tomato juice or whatever it is that they always.
Tomate de árbol.
Yeah, that stuff. They kept force feeding me that.
Yeah.
That sounds bad.
That's like frothy tomato. It's not good.
Yeah, there's some stuff that's tough.
Something to get through.
You have your phone on you? SB? Or you know the password to your computer? I need to try to pay
Yeah,
my
that
phone
cheese
real
is-
quick.
That cheese is crazy.
You got too.
Yeah, or just pull that thing.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, it was. Boy, some things are quite tough to stomach there. And like my first couple trips, man, like I enjoyed the food. I could really eat. Normally I would gain weight on the trips.
Yeah.
Heck no, not now, dude.
Like-
I'm emaciated when I come back. Like I
Don
can't.
William Martillo, I had a really good meal when we went to his farm. It was about 11 servings of rice, and then
Maybe more. Yeah.
the chicken and the plantains.
Yeah.
That was good. I enjoyed that. But y'all also stayed for a week longer, so you were a little bit more worn
PW
down.
was done. Yeah, I know. Man. I mean,
He was
because when you
done.
first get there, you
Bro.
feel like you can eat it all, and I'm telling you, it just catches up with you, man. Like you gotta. So like I've just learned, like I'm fine because I just, know that I'm gonna lose a ton of weight, and I just wear it.
I stayed the perfect amount of time. I think
You did.
I think
You did.
was
You
it 6
were-
days?
That chicken soup for me at that one restaurant, and this black dog walks in with blue eyes. So that was already freaky, and then the soup comes out and had whole chicken feet in it, and I was like, "What did you just?"
I think 6 days is the magic number. You'd stayed up there for a long time though.
I've stayed up there for a month.
Oof.
Yeah, but that was early on when like I could eat. I'm telling you, like.
Yeah.
But now it's strictly white rice and strictly no bone chicken.
No bone chicken.
No, I can't. Like they're like as Mary Catherine just said. They'll bring you the feet, dog. Like, come on, man. It's hard to see that, But
I guess so.
I love them.
Could you push the mic just a tiny bit in front of you? If you can. Should be glued in there. All right, thanks. I stayed the perfect amount of time, and I was about 1 or 2 days longer. Like the first 3 days, I was like, this is wonderful. 4th day, you're like, okay, when are we leaving? 5th day, you're like, all right, ready to go. At least in my case for first time.
What'd you think about the plane experience on the 6th day?
Oh yeah, that was many of the words that are not family friendly were said that night. I'll let you recall that story, but to preface what I was going to say, we got to the airport, we got to Quito, so we'd stayed in San Lorenzo that night. That's another good example behind the brand. If staying at that mansion on the beach, it's like if that wasn't on behind the brand, everybody would feel like we're playing into the story a little bit.
Yeah.
No, you can see it right there. Great swimming pool. That hot tub was wonderful. But even when we got back to the airport, I was so excited to try a little bit of Americanized food in Quito. And they had that Cinnabon there. I was telling you about that Cinnabon like literally 3 or 4 days ago.
I think it's fool's gold, man.
Fool's gold. It sounds amazing, and then you have it, and you're like, I'm still not in America.
Dude, it's tough. Because there's also a Johnny Rockets. You know,
Now, I've never had Johnny Rockets in the States. Is that like a burger joint?
Well, I never had it in the States either, but it's like, it's a burger joint. So you're like, oh, dude, yes, an American burger. You know, well, a U.S. burger, I should say.
Yeah.
And I've gotten one before, and I take a bite into it. But I will say, I think the thing about Quito that's really tough, I mean, it's 2 guys that have relatively grown up at sea level. You know what I mean? Like, sure, I mean, making maybe a little north of Savannah as far as sea level is concerned, but it's something like Quito's 12,000, 10,000 feet up when you land. So that really plays with you too, if you're not accustomed to it.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? That
I don't think anybody in America is, unless you live in like Colorado.
Yeah, right. Like that really plays with you because everything just, you feel different. Like you naturally feel a little altitude sickness. And so therefore just smacking a burger it doesn't hit the same.
Yeah.
You know?
Then that plane ride, man. Because we flew out of, where did we fly out? San Lorenzo?
So we flew out of Manta, which is close to San Lorenzo.
We flew into Quito, and then we probably flew in that morning, like 10 or 11, something like that by the time we were all said and done. And then we had all of the day, which was great for work.
100%. Yeah.
Quito is a nice airport, I'll say that.
It is.
It is a very nice airport. So we were able to stay in like their visitor section. It's like a layover section or something like that.
Yeah, right.
You know, all those restaurants. And then we had a flight that night. Was it at 11 o'clock that night? It was definitely a red eye.
100%. All the flights going out are at around midnight.
Okay. So we got onto the plane. And I want to know what you were thinking too, because that was my sigh of relief. As soon as I get on the plane and get seated, like we're going home. I started like kind of, you know, playing back the story in my mind of the trip, how great it was, you know, just in that environment. You're on the plane, like you're definitely going. Plane doesn't take off on time. Midnight comes around, 1 o'clock comes around, 2 o'clock comes around. It had to have been between 2 and 3. They say, we can't take off.
Yeah.
And something with they gave us the runaround with a lot of excuses.
Yeah.
What was and so we had to get off the plane, still in Quito. What was dude, I know what I was experiencing from you, but what were you feeling in that moment getting off that plane at 2:30 in the morning? Because I knew you had zoned out. Like, you know, we were busting that trip. You especially did. Y'all stayed an extra week. So I knew you were tired on that plane, like ready to get home. And dude, you had to, there's many times I've seen you angry, but this one was like a fury at which I've never experienced from you.
Well, I mean, just from traveling a good bit in Ecuador, I've always learned that you always have to be open to something occurring. You know, and until like the plane literally lands on U.S. soil, I don't ever feel safe. Like safe from the standpoint of not like getting taken, but safe from the standpoint of just something happening.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, there's something that always seems to come up, you know, every time we try to travel around. And like, I mean, 2 days before that, we were having to pay off this police officer because he pulled us over. Yeah. And we had to pay him $100 to be able to drive.
He wanted 900 or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just to get up to Manta, and we had a friend driving us. It was crazy. But anyways, no, I mean, the thing about the Ecuadorian airport that always makes me like, puts me on edge is it is the most unorganized process. I would assume any airport in the world, just because I've only been to so many international airports, but it is incredibly unorganized, and it's always the same way. You know, where it's this frenzy of trying to get on the plane. But I think the most frustrating point is like when you're getting off the plane, you know, there's no plan of attack.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's not planned out. So it's just, you know, you got to go get a ticket and get a hotel and okay, we'll send you an email when your new plane ride is. I'm no fool. I've done it many times.
Yeah.
I know when the next plane is. It's tomorrow at midnight.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, that plane's already full.
Yep.
And that was the problem. It's like, well, you know, that's from like what my understanding is of the airline industry is it's always better to frustrate one plane of customers than to frustrate 2 planes, 3 planes, 4 planes by trying to take the frustrated group and integrating them and taking seats away from the next night.
Yeah.
So the first excuse that we were given on that plane was, which, I mean, I don't want to be up in the air over top of the Gulf of, I guess now America, and there become a problem with the plane.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because that's a lose-lose situation.
Yeah.
But they said that there was some mechanical failure, you know, so I'm using just simple objective reasoning thinking, okay, you didn't fix it tonight. You're telling me to have a flight tomorrow. That's completely dependent upon you fixing the plane.
Yeah.
Right. So how can I trust that the plane's going to be fixed properly? And it's not like we're in Delta headquarters by any stretch of the imagination. We're not in a Hartsfield Jackson with 500 Delta flights around with mechanics out of the wazoo.
You got Arturo's friend out there.
Arturo's friend's working on the plane.
Yeah.
Which I trust that guy. I mean, I trust that he's qualified and capable of working on the plane, but it's the volume of people working on a plane.
You need 3 or 4 of his friends.
Right. And at Hartsfield Jackson, you have 300 or 400 people that are capable of pivoting and working on this to get it done. And so, you know, I mean, thankfully, because of, you know, the diamond medallion or whatever status we have because of all the flights to Ecuador, we were able to get a new flight that didn't even take us into Atlanta. You know, we had to
Miami.
connect to Miami, almost missed the connection flight because Miami Airport makes you go out, do customs there, and then come back in.
Yep.
If you remember that.
Is that why we were circling? Wait, no. I'm
So,
sorry.
yeah.
We were circling for a while.
Yeah, so you and BW were like sprinting to get to the gate.
Yeah.
You know, I'm waiting on you guys. I'm kind of, you know, talking with the gate agent, like, hey, hold the door, please. You know, I had friends coming.
Because our plane had been circling for like 30, 40 minutes. Do you remember that?
That's right. Yeah, because of weather or something.
Yeah,
but it was just the whole conundrum. But it's one of those you just have to know that it's going to happen in Ecuador. Something always just happens, and you got to do the best you can with the cards that you're dealt. And I think the difference in the U.S. with, like, we have so much trust, just given trust that Delta's going to make it right. Delta's got enough highly qualified, intelligent people, the Miami Airport, Hartsfield Jackson, like, we're going to figure it out in the U.S., you know. But in Ecuador, so much of it, you just got to figure it out on your own. And I think that's the key difference. Like, we didn't even live to find out. We didn't even stay to find out. But, like, the probability that plane took off the next night is probably pretty low, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
You know, those individuals that stayed just waiting for it, that went to the Galapagos and had a sweet little time, came back, and were just expecting to get flown right back into the U.S., I would imagine they probably waited another couple of days. Yeah. You know, because I would assume other, you know, technicians that are constantly working on these massive international planes probably flew over to assist. But, you know, it's part of the Ecuadorian experience, you know, and, like, I mean, it's part of the culture that, like, I've come, and that's the other thing, like, going to the culture, nothing's a rush. Mm-hmm. You know, and I think that's another thing that I always have in the back of my mind is if I need something to get done now, you know, look at the urgency and importance chart, going back to that. There is no such thing as urgency in Ecuador. They don't operate with urgency. They don't live with urgency. So everything just gets scheduled and, you know, may take days, you know, to figure out. So if I need something done now, I mean, I kind of have to use the resources that we have and get them done, you know. But yeah, I was very, very hot, very frustrated, but yeah, you know, it is what it is.
Yeah. I'm glad you had that diamond status. We got into the hotel.
We leveraged that to its fullest extent possible.
Yeah, we got into that.
Slept for 2 hours.
Yeah, got in that hotel, slept for a couple hours, right back up. But boy, that was something.
Yeah,
good times.
A little extra excitement.
I'm learning I have the tolerance for about 1 week a year to handle something like that.
Right.
If that makes sense.
But I mean, so like a lot of what learning about the food and like what I can eat and what I couldn't eat occurred on the 2 week experience with Buerster on Mission, you know, because I'm telling you, it's inevitable. When you first land in there, that stuff looks good. That plantain's a big ball of tigrillo.
Yeah.
That
you get me hungry, boy.
eggs and cheese just stuffed in plantains.
Yeah.
You're like, wow, this is different. You try it and it's good, but then your stomach starts feeling a little different. You don't know that that's going to occur until you just experience it. I mean, it's a whole different culture. So like when the more times you go, the more you can stage yourself and almost like what is the word, like what am I looking for, like the endurance. Like you're more endurance focused, like, hey, let me just eat white rice and chicken even on day one if that tigrillo is smelling good. Because no matter what, by day 6 that tigrillo doesn't smell very good to you. So it's like you build up an endurance and a tolerance of like, okay, where do I attack? But man, the Ecuador trips where we just get to ride in ride the truck, windows down, the air is just as free as can be because there's no pollution get thrown into the air. I mean, those are the memories that, the good memories, the reason that you want to go and the things that you can enjoy when you learn to build up that endurance.
Yeah. And I wasn't even mad about throwing up. I was fine to get it out of my system.
I mean, you tossed it out of your body and then immediately got right back in the truck. And
Yep. It was ready to roll.
Yeah.
Yeah. You pull off anywhere, though. That's the crazy thing. Just immediately slam on brakes on the highway.
Well, when you drive 6 hours and you see 2 vehicles, that's nice.
Yeah, you're good. Dude, those roads, I thank the Lord for Dramamine, man.
Yeah. Thankfully, I have a good, I've never had to take
okay, you don't have a bad stomach for that kind of stuff?
Never have.
Wow.
Never have. So I think
good
that's,
for you.
Definitely lucky because of, there's been many of crazy trips on those mountains, especially at night when it's pitch black. The fog sets in and it's just, Mary Catherine knows this.
Yeah.
That fog is thick.
Dude.
And you can't see the edge of the mountain and they're hauling.
Max's head is slamming on the window.
100 kilometers an hour.
And
just skidding around the mountain like, oof.
If they're not sure where to go to, they'll just start scaling that mountain, it seems like. The car. They'll just go off the road, find a little dirt path.
Yeah.
And just carve
Do you remember the night when we were coming back from
what was
Napoleon
going on?
Elizalde's? So we were leaving Ciano trying to get back to Zaruma, and we just left too late. And so Arturo was trying to take a back route through the mountains rather than like an extra 2-hour trip on a very nice road, mind you.
Yeah.
And so there's no GPS. Arturo didn't pick up his phone, throw it in Apple Maps. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's no Apple Maps. So Arturo's just playing by feel, I guess, looking at the Northern Star. And, we kept like coming to these forks, man. Remember that? And like Arturo would be like, he's scared. So we'd make a left. We'd go about 3 kilometers. And Arturo was like, no. So literally backing up because you can't turn around off the side of the mountain. And, but that was honest. The only reason I was at peace that night is because I'm telling you, the fog creates a very different dynamic. They still don't give a rip, but I do.
Yeah.
And like, I'm like, oh boy, this is it. Like, I mean, I've lived a good one. I gave it all I had and I died doing something I love to do.
Yeah.
But, boy, it's, thankfully that night there was no fog. So it was like, okay, at least I know we're not going to run off the side of the mountain. We may never get there, but like, at least we're going to still be on our feet.
That was my first night. I didn't realize how long the drive was going to be from.
That was your first night.
Yeah, from the airport. I hadn't even been to Arturo's house yet. We were on the way back to his house.
Yeah.
So y'all threw me in the car for 9 hours. I was like, boy, like we're ready to roll. I didn't realize it was going to be 9 hours.
But you had good job on me because you had that little flight over the mountains.
Yeah.
And you straight down.
You're like a B-2 bomber coming into
the
land.
That's exactly what you are. Like you go straight up, straight down, and then bank, a hard bank, like you're on the side, like seeing straight down, and then they land that thing, man.
Yeah, that must be like Ecuadorian special forces flying those things.
Dude, you know what's wild is all the pilots are.
Really?
Oh,
like so. Felt like it.
I met this one pilot in Quito that flew for LATAM. Which is
I love LATAM.
Yeah, which is the Latin American airline you flew. You
came
in on it. And all of them are ex-military guys. So like, there's no co-pilot. They don't have the money. Like there's no co-pilot. Like it's this one cat and you're like, all right, Bubba, get it on. Get the bird down.
It's putting those earmuffs on just.
Yeah. I told you, I warned you about that one. So you probably, Dramamine.
Yeah.
But
Captain was was hearing the other side of that Zoom call. She was having a moment with it, but I was enjoying every second of it. You're like, listen, plane's going to drop about 300 feet. It's going to come right back up.
Yeah. Dude, you know what always gets me the most, though? Is like,
What is that?
when you're taking off from Quito and then you see the mountain dead ahead of you.
Yes.
And you're like, oh boy, climb. And this thing's like, because like all this downdraft coming from the mountains, because you're in a big bowl in the Quito airport. It's just sucking you down. This plane shaking, trying to get up above it, and then so like that, you're already like fight or flight, you're full fight. You know what I mean? Like you were just all anxiety.
Well, and full flight too.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah.
And you get above it and you're finally like, okay, this is, and then you're like, man, this is pretty, like these nice scenery, you're right below the clouds. And so you can see the entire landscape. Beautiful.
It is beautiful.
And then all of a sudden, boom, and you just start nose diving. Bang, land. You're like, oh boy, it occurs quick. But
if I could fly Latam every flight, I would. Those guys know what to do.
Yeah.
If I'm going to Key West.
Dude, I heard this story about Latam that they declared bankruptcy. Okay. And one of the things that was going on was the Ecuadorian government was like, or other Latin American countries were charging them $5,000 for computers, like simple computers. They were getting charged a ton of money for. And so, they had declared bankruptcy. And I don't necessarily know like how they overcame it, you know what I mean? But like, still flies. I mean, it's probably maybe like a government bailout type situation.
Yeah.
But they were being charged a ton of money and actually declared bankruptcy. And there were many more. Like I've flown one that was called like Avianca, similar. It was red, but similar to Latam. But they would have propeller planes. Were you on a propeller? You were on a jet.
No, I was on a jet. Yep.
Yeah.
I was on a jet.
So you'd have the propeller planes, and those are the biggest ones. You're sitting out there watching that propeller, like, listen here, you son of a bitch. You better not stop.
You
better not stop.
Don't go out on me.
No.
Because I think on a jet, one engine goes out, you're still good. But a propeller plane, is it the double?
It's
dual
literally
propellers?
just something about, no, it's double.
Double.
You got one on each side. But like, it's something about watching the propeller just spin.
Yeah.
Where you're like, on the jet, you can't necessarily see the engine blow up, but like you're watching this thing, like, you better stop.
You better
keep on
turning, boy.
But no, it's it definitely opens your eyes for sure.
I'll sign off with this last one from your blog. Let's see. I got a couple different ones, so I'm gonna pick the one that. Let's see. All right. Let's do this one. We've overcome some major obstacles with Z-Beans over the past 4 years, but none have impacted me more than this one. I never could have imagined telling any teammate that they would no longer have a job tomorrow. I never could have imagined our Mercer Village store only serving 20 customers per day. I never could have imagined any of this, but the one thing for sure, I couldn't do this without my brothers by my side. Calm is contagious. Is that COVID related?
That is COVID, 100%. Yeah, I had to, we met at the downtown store, and I had to tell every barista that, unfortunately we cannot continue to pay you. So, I have to release you from the job, but I will be a good, do the very best that I can to get the unemployment, for you. And we did, man. We did. We filed it. I don't even know how many times, but every teammate that was with us, got the unemployment. And what was interesting was how many teammates came back, and a lot of teammates, even while they were receiving the unemployment, like one that comes to mind immediately is Pristine Garcia, who still works at the downtown store, now a franchise shop, but she's still with Z-Beans. And we started kind of coming out of it, needed help, but didn't necessarily have the ability to, pay people what we previously were. And Pristine, she has 5 kids, so she was getting not only the normal unemployment, but all these added benefits for having multiple children. She wanted to come back, but that was a very difficult day, having to meet with them all and, not necessarily knowing what was next, but knowing that we wanted to find a way to keep the stores open, and thankfully at that time we had 3 stores. So I took one, Ben took one, CV took one, and I would work Piedmont, because Piedmont was open 6 to 9, 7 days a week.
Mm-hmm.
And we did it. We kept them open. And it was, we learned a lot. I mean, out of that moment, I was there at the Piedmont store. The COO of the hospital came up and said that they were really struggling in their cafeteria and they needed to either shut it down temporarily or significantly cut hours because of staffing problems that everyone was having,
Mm-hmm.
and profitability problems, losing tons of money. And so she'd asked if we could expand the menu, and she would, Kelly Lindsay was her name. She said that she would help drive traffic to us. And like that literally birthed the production house concept.
Mm-hmm.
Just being willing to stay open, willing to be the best amenity that we could be for the hospital and just be there for those that were forced to work. I mean, of all businesses or organizations at that time, hospitals were the biggest thing. It was literally COVID. They were inundated with people coming in and sick. So, it was definitely good came out of it for sure. But that was a tough time. And I was talking to Max about it last week, actually, with the tariff situation that's going on of like, man, entrepreneurs who started, circa 2016, 2017, like, man, you've been thrown a lot of different stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, think of in the U.S., how we had decades. Sure, you had the housing crisis in 2008, which I can't even imagine how much that impacted businesses. But you had decades in the 70s, 80s, 90s, early 2000s, pre-housing crisis, where business was pretty strong.
Yep.
And that's 40 years, but within 8 years, you have all these different things that are thrown at you that you have to try to figure out, and as I said in there, I mean, having brothers, having teammates that are willing to stick by your side and figure it out even through difficult times. Thank God that we're all pretty young, and able to pay ourselves less if those times come, or the responsibilities that we have outside of Z-Beans, we can just pour all of our time into Z-Beans and not necessarily having other responsibilities to take care of. But I definitely, over the last decade, all the different entrepreneurs that have tried to start businesses within that time frame, like, man, you've been dealt a lot of tough hands to try to overcome, but I think it makes you more resilient.
Yeah.
And it helps you understand, again, going back to that urgency and importance of what truly becomes an urgent matter, or things that you can try to work around. And all of those things make you better. I mean, I literally said it in November, which is why in December we sent a big purchase order in for all of our dry goods, because those had to arrive in February. Those had to arrive before tariffs took place. Like, if I didn't have all those experiences, would I have been able to analyze that and set ourselves up for success now in this big tariff war with China, in which we otherwise simply cannot import products because we don't have, because it's too costly? Well, the good thing is right now we have a little bit of space because we just got this big shipment in that will carry us a little bit, so in those difficult times, it builds resilience, but it also builds that muscle that we opened up with the concept of trying to, work on the business and forecast, and those are big problems that come up where those decisions are easier to make when you have experience, so there's no trade, there's no substitute.
What does that quote, "calm is contagious," mean to you? That's a good one.
It is. It's definitely one of my favorites. I think it's when the going gets really tough and that it could be tough, you want all of teammates, all of them that are, in leadership that may have direct reports coming to them, if everyone in the company is thinking that the house is about to burn down, do you necessarily want your team member that is doing a very, very important job of packaging coffee bags to think that their job could potentially be in jeopardy? No, you really don't. Because what are they going to rationally do? Rationally, they're going to probably apply for other jobs, right? As they should. Now, that's not to say you don't want to be open and honest. If indeed you're to that point, like we were with COVID, and we legitimately could not carry them, well, you got to come to the table with, hey, this is the plan. I'm going to do right by you and, set you up for success. But I've fortunately been able to do that with a lot of teammates in which, as we're changing our growth focus, we may not be as focused on wholesale growth, right? Like that early on where I was out just constantly trying to find businesses to buy coffee from us. We're switching that strategy to try to dedicate as many resources and as much time as we can to the hospital growth model because we found that works for us. It's okay for those that are on the sales team where I know that, hey, we may be cutting this, calm is contagious. I can't run to them and say, hey guys, just so you know, we'll be cutting this. Good luck. Instead, I reach out to other businesses that I know are still focused on that model, have a job, like literally have a whole position lined up for them with that other company. They're able to take on, the work from that company. And I let them know like, hey, but this is what I have set up for you. You don't have to take it, but I know you're passionate about this and I think it'd be something good for you, but it is calm is contagious. And in difficult moments as leaders, as owners, you have to be calm, and for a lot of people, being calm allows for even better decision making too. Even for yourself. I do my best strategy and thought, not when I'm being inundated with questions, but when I'm by myself, when I'm calm. So it's important.
I'll sign off on this one thing. Since we're on the quote deal, let me read you the poem that I had, The Road Ahead or the Road Behind.
That's so good, yeah.
So the backstory behind the poem is that I used to play high school football and I had wrist sleeves because I was a pulling guard. So, I was using my wrists a lot for the big old boys in the trenches. And I love this poem so much, so I'd always write the road ahead or the road behind. Or I would write the road ahead, the road behind on my wrist straps. That's always what I did before every game. And I would tell everybody in the huddle too, because I was one of the team captains. I would tell everybody, I would always recite the poem. That was my thing. One of the games, we were playing Aquinas, regional finals.
Very good football team.
Yep. Those are boys right there.
Yeah.
Some quarter horses in the trenches.
Very good football team.
It was one of the games where I didn't come off the field that entire game. It was really muggy, humid. It rained previously, so the field was really slick. Just one of those games in high school where you play both ways, but for some reason, you did not come out that game. I did not come out that game. So, I was fighting like a dog that entire game and ended up having some heat stroke symptoms during that game. Like my vision would go out when I go on the sideline to get ready for special teams. So my vision was going out, but it's one of those things, you suck it up in the moment.
Yeah.
You suck it up in the moment. The team needs you. I was covering, and then towards the end of the game, we ended up losing the game. But towards the fourth quarter, we were punting the ball away. One of the last possessions of the game, we just had to punt it to them. They eventually ran out the clock. That's how the game ended. We lost by a couple points, but I was covering a punt, and I just, I was kind of like the gunner, so I lined up in the trenches, and you just, you kind of push block, and then you release. I released down the left hash of the field, and I got, how punts are. Got blindsided. My helmet came off over the top of my head, and I fell into the mud, and then the play just so happened to end on me. So I had a cleat go through my ear, just completely gash open my ear. So I basically had like a big piercing that went through this ear right here. But I'm completely disoriented. It felt a little concussed at that moment, but I'm just like laying in the mud. I'm like crawling in the mud, and there's blood pouring down the side of my face. Everybody runs over because I think it's like a brain bleed at that point. And then they're like, oh, it's your ear or whatever. But at that point, that was like my last play of the game.
Yeah.
And, they were like cutting stuff off and, just assessing me, taking shoulder pads off, making sure I was good to go. And kind of in the storm of everything, the one wrist strap and add all the little accessories, everything, The only thing that was left on me was the road ahead. And that was pretty poetic to me. It's like the road behind is gone. Like all you got is the road ahead. So in my house right now, I have a shadow box of the poem with that wrist wrap.
It gives me chills.
It says the road ahead on it.
Yeah.
Someone read it to you. The Road Ahead or the Road Behind by George Joseph Moriarty. Sometimes I think the fates must grin as we denounce and insist. The only reason we can't win is the fates themselves that miss. Yet there lives on an ancient claim, we win or lose within ourselves. The shining trophies on our shelves can never win tomorrow's game. You and I know deeper down, there's always a chance to win the crown. But when we fail to give our best, we simply haven't met the test. Of giving all and saving none until the game is really won. Of showing what is meant by grit, of fighting on when others quit, of playing through, not letting up, it's bearing down that wins the cup. Of taking it and taking more until we gain the winning score. Of dreaming there's a goal ahead, of hoping when our dreams are dead, of praying when our hopes have fled, yet losing, not afraid to fall, if bravely we have given all. For who can ask more of a man than giving all within his span? Giving all, it seems to me, is not so far from victory. And so the fates are seldom wrong, no matter how they twist and wind. It is you and I who make our fates. We open up or close the gates on the road ahead or the road behind. See you guys.
That's great. That's big time.
Good episode.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome.
You and I who make our fates.
What did that stick out?